Okay, and we are back. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about today, so I might just sort of pick a topic out of my tarot deck I designed, a little like higher consciousness deck, and we'll just go from there. I just did an Instagram live, and I don't want to really rehash the same content, but I'm sure if it bleeds in, we'll talk about it. I do want to kind of talk about one thing, maybe before I pick a card, to get us on a different topic. I want to talk about the theme. I actually did a video on this the other day, but we're going to talk about it here. Every damsel has a dagger. And someone said that on something I was listening to, and I was like, that's a good video, right? Every damsel has a dagger. What does that exactly mean? Expect the unexpected? What do we? Because a lot of times we look at, when we're in our human aspect, we look at everything very linearly, right? We don't have the capability yet to look at things multidimensionally. So we only see one part of it. We only see ourselves. We will be respectful to ourselves eventually, but still disrespectful to others because we don't have the capacity yet to see how we affect the whole, how we affect everybody. We only see ourselves. And that's just how that is. And for a long time, and when we're in our human consciousness, we don't even realize we're even doing that. We have such a, what's the word I want to use? We're just linearly focused. We don't have the capacity to even think of anything else or worry about anybody else. We just don't. It's us, and it's numero uno, and that's how our human ego is, and that's what it is. That's just how it's designed. So when we start talking about multidimensionality, we start looking at, and like I said, everything, it's funny because everything is multidimensionality, but a lot of the content on multidimensionality, especially like Marvel's putting out a lot of content on it. I think even DC, a lot of the comic books are trying to put out multidimensionality content, right? They're like, oh, let's just throw it out there. But what they're finding is, which is kind of funny, is even though technically that it's an activation for people, when people talk about multidimensionality, it does activate your multidimensional consciousness. It activates your DNA. Everything activates your DNA. And then your DNA will start to unravel. So right now, all our human realities are all crooked and distorted because our DNA is crooked and distorted. Kind of unravels everything. So when we start to think about multidimensionality and we look at all the content out there, it's funny because what they're finding is people can't follow it. People are because everyone's trying to follow it and they're trying to write it from a human linear perspective, and you can't write multidimensionality or talk about multidimensionality from it's not a one-trick pony. It is an infinite everything, right? It's infinite aspects of us. It's like we can't judge anything anyone's done because we've all done the same thing, and we've done it repeatedly, and we have done it to each other, and we have been the murderer, we have been the victim, we have been the slave, we've been the slave owner, we've been the rapist, we've been raped, we've been it all. You name it, you've been it, and you've done it. So when we look at different realities, and we even look at ours, you can still see everyone tries to judge everybody else because they don't have the capability yet. And that just means they haven't got to that time in their DNA when it's their time, right? So they don't have the capability to look at something and say, wow, look at that. Look, I didn't even see how much I judged that. So you see everyone judging everybody. That's good, that's bad. When we're in that mindset of that's good, that's bad, that's our humanness in a sense. Yeah, it's our ego. Someone wants to call it the shadow. I don't really so much like that term, but you'll see it. Or what's another one? Shadow aspect, the darkness. Everyone doesn't make it kind of ominous. Gives it a little more power, and I think it also, when you use those terms, it kind of separates you off from it. When you say, hey, it's my ego, not even just ego, is mine. You have to kind of own it because it's still the unconscious part of us. It doesn't actually go anywhere. It just doesn't make the decisions anymore. It's not the person that's in control. But what we're finding is with multidimensionality is people are trying to write about it and explain it, but they're having a hard time doing that, and they're having a hard time getting other people who are still in their very linear focus to kind of get into it, because it's you can't understand it from your brain. So it doesn't really have the it's not having the draw. But it is an activation. for people when they hear it, because they will kind of accept it, and it opens them up to the topic, and they will accept it in a media format that they say, quote, is not real, than thinking about it in their own context. Then they think it's crazy and weird. But they'll watch a movie on it and be like, oh yeah, that's crazy. That's really cool. But I really can't understand that that's really happens, or that's really a possibility. Because you can't see that yet. And when we're in different phases, we can't see that yet. We can't see how our multidimensionality, how many facets of it we are. We only see the one facet. It's like when we're in a reality, we only see that one facet of the reality. We have to get our consciousness above that reality where our body is setting in, because our consciousness is always going to be able to go higher than our body. We have to get it above that so we can then look at all the facets of the reality we're in, so we can then rearrange it. We can align it, but we can't do that when we are, off doing something else. So it kind of led me back to how I started, and I will look at the chat. I just normally don't do that in the beginning. So I get a couple topics out, and then I'll check the chat, see if I have any questions. When we talk about every damsel has a dagger, and it is, like I said, a topic I did in a video, but I want to kind of see if I can pull it apart a little bit more when I'm not trying to constrain it under a certain amount of time. What does that really mean? Because we look at masculine energy, we look at feminine energy, and you have human masculine energy, you have feminine energy, human feminine energy, and feminine energy is very whiny energy. And masculine energy can be a very narcissistic energy, kind of a blaming energy. That's kind of human masculine energy. And people think, oh, men have masculine, females have feminine. But we all have both, right? You're going to meet some people, even in a human aspect, that you can look and go, they have very strong masculine energy. And if it's a female, it doesn't really matter the body you're in. We kind of look at it as the body somebody's in. It doesn't really matter. But we kind of look at it like that. What body is that person in? And we try to typecast everybody. We're just as bad as Hollywood in a sense. We're going to typecast everyone into a certain box. Where eventually you will transcend those levels of those energies, and you're going to look at the divine masculine and divine feminine. They're not the same. Just because you're a male doesn't mean you have divine masculine energy. That's just a doing energy. That's your Saturn energy coming out. If you're going to go into the planets inside of us, that gets activated when Saturn transitions through your sign. You're going to find that certain planets are going to affect you more because you haven't embodied in those aspects yet. As soon as you embody in those aspects and you understand those planets are inside of you, and you get rid of the distortions that are not those aspects, those planetary aspects, and they don't bother you anymore. Like Mercury retrograde used to really bother me because I had so many things going on inside of me. Like if you don't communicate clearly, it's going to bother you, And we're going to get things get crossed. Things get all crossed. You're going to hot wire out electricity. Anything mechanical goes wire when Mercury's retrograde. Those are all kind of fairy tales in a sense. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but there are the human wants to set rules to that. Don't do this during Mercury retrograde. Don't do this during Mercury retrograde. But what it really does is it activates inside of us our Mercury planet, and it's going to activate that. And once you've cleared out all the distortions that aren't that is not that Mercury energy, which is communication energy, which is really being able to communicate not just with others but with yourself, connecting with yourself. And once you've cleared all those distortions around what's not that energy, you'll find it doesn't bother you anymore. Because you're always going to communicate clearly. You're always going to really connect with yourself and look at, do I want to do this now? Do I not want to do this now? Is it time for me to look back at something? Or do I really need to do that? Am I going to allow that to come back around again? Is it a purpose to that? Or do I shut that out? Sometimes things will come back around again to kind of test us, to see, hey, are we going to fall for that again? Are we going to go through that again? Are we going to tee up that reality and go back to the old? Because we can't really go back to the old. A lot of the content I do so much content, and some people will say, well, why don't you just go back and edit out one of your old videos and put it as a reel or something, And I'm like, one, I don't want to take the time to do it. It's easier for me to just come on and do more, because there's always something I can talk about instead of chopping something up. And it puts me back in an old place. Because after I do a talk, after I do a video, I could not tell you what's on it. I don't really remember. I can go back and look at a video I did, and it's like I don't remember doing it, and I couldn't tell you one thing I talked about on it. I have no idea what that video is about, besides the title. But if someone asked me the question again, I could pull up whatever information is important now, whatever comes in through my field, which we need to talk about, we'll talk about it. But to tell you verbatim what's on a verbatim, there it is, verbatim what's on a video I did till 20 minutes ago, I couldn't even tell you what's on it because I don't really remember. So it's kind of funny how we'll go back and forth with a lot of that stuff. So, and it puts us back in an old place. When we have realities come back around, you know, do we put ourselves back in that old place? Or do we say, no, I'm not going to put myself back in that old place. You know, I don't really want to go back in that old place. It feels like it's the same thing. And we have to be open to it not being the same thing. Now, we've had that discussion lots on here. You know, we have to be open to it not being the same thing. We have to show up as something different. But if we get the same aspect of someone, then we know, okay, it's the same thing. And I know how it's starting. I'd rather not go through it again, and because it's going to end the same place. Because if everyone's not starting out from their highest place, it's still a karmic timeline. Even if we are trying to start out from our highest aspect in that moment we can hit, if everyone isn't doing that, then it's still a karmic timeline. It might be one you feel like you're supposed to go through, and you're supposed to be there for that person to show them something, and they're going to show you something. So sometimes we'll know it's karmic. You know, I got into a lot of stuff that I knew was karmic, and I'm still in a couple things that I know are karmic, but because I have a higher purpose to be there, I allow it. You know, I'm going to be like, okay, there's a higher purpose here. So I'm here for a different reason. I have a sole purpose to be here. So even though I know it's karmic, I'm going to let this play out. But there will be a time when those things won't assist, it won't happen anymore. Because I won't have any more soul agreements to do. You know, I won't have anything else I have to accomplish in that sense. It'll all be done, and I won't have to go back and play in that stuff anymore. But there are a couple now I still know. A couple things you have dangling out, you know, that you kind of know you're supposed to be here, and you know there's a bigger purpose. So, you know, when we start getting into how we set up realities, which I focus a lot on myself on how we set up realities. You know, how we created it, how we dismantle it. You know, how do we recreate something else? Because we have to bring all that higher consciousness in and ground it, anchor it in our root chakra. Even though technically after a while in ascension, you don't really have individual chakras anymore. They all kind of merge into one. But since I did come from an energetic background, you know, I did learn through the chakras, which that's just a way to kind of, you know, Reiki is kind of a key code. Astrology is a key code. It just wakes you up to something more than the physical. That's all. That's all it really does. Some people get drawn to it, some people don't. Crystals are the same thing. It just wakes you up that there's something else going on here that's not something I can see. It just awakens that consciousness. It activates that consciousness in us, and we kind of get obsessed with it. And we'll keep going down the rabbit hole in a lot of that stuff to learn and understand. But, you know, we have to bring all that energy from our higher realms, or if we wanted to go by the chakra systems, from our crown chakra. We have to purify our root chakra. A lot of people just want to hit it with the crown chakra, but they don't want to bring it down. They don't want to anchor it in. They don't want to do that, because if you purify your root chakra and you start bringing it all the way down, that means you have to purify everything in your life. That's where you lose a lot of people, because people aren't ready to do that yet. And I know when it was my time to do that, I wasn't ready to do that either. There were some things I wanted to keep, and I didn't want to have to make the big choices. I didn't want to have to listen to it's time to sell your house, or it's time to leave that relationship, or it's time to leave that job. You don't want to hear that stuff, you know, because you don't want to have to make the big shifts. Everyone says, oh, I'm fine with it, until the big shifts come, and then we're not fine with it anymore. No matter how open we think we are. Everyone can be open when they're not getting the message to do anything really massive to upheave their life. You know, it's kind of like that old line, is that in that movie, You Got Mail? You know, and it was a line in it, well, it's not personal. And I think Meg Ryan was in that movie. I don't know. She said, well, it wasn't personal to you. You know, it wasn't personal to you. It was personal to me. Even though we don't take anything personal, I would kind of twist that a little bit and say, you know, it didn't pertain to you at the moment. You know, if it doesn't pertain to you in the moment, you're fine saying, oh, open, you know, you'll see all the time content going out saying, oh, be wide open, open your heart, and listen, and blah, blah, blah. But is the other person doing that? It's easy to say that when you haven't been called to do anything yet. It's easy to say align your life when you haven't had to align yours yet. Or it's all really fluffy energy when you're in ascension, because that's the phase you're in, and you haven't gotten to a phase where you've had to really shift much yet. Because if your whole life hasn't completely shifted, you haven't finished that part yet. Because your life will not look the same. I cannot stress that enough. When you look around at the people, there's not a lot of people. And some people clear out people. I kind of cleared out people so I could focus on my journey. Even though I didn't do it intentionally, that's kind of what happened. Everyone kind of went, and it was just kind of me left. And then you're kind of careful about what you let back in. Because you just don't want to deal with a lot of the... It becomes more challenging to find that connection. It becomes more challenging to find someone that you really want to build a relationship with. Humans, we want to huddle up with everyone and build relationships with everybody. Humans want to hang out all day, and we can't really do that because we have to have so much alone time. We can't be in the same room with other people 24/7. It's just not something we can do because we have to hold the field. We have to hold our field. We have to hold ourselves to the highest. We have no interest in sitting around and being with someone for 25 hours, 24 hours straight every day. I have no interest. 4 or 5 hours, that's a lot of time. There's certain things I'll do unless I'm around small children, which is really one of the realities I do participate in because of my godchildren. I'd be around the children for a longer periods of time, but I cannot be around other adults in their reality for long periods of time. Because the vibration of the children is high enough where it's not so straining to hold the field. But even after a few days of that, I need to be by myself to tune my field. You can't tune your field with 1,000 people in your field. You're going to find that people, if you live with people might stay on opposite ends of the house, especially when one person is in a different consciousness, substantially different than the rest of the house. Different rooms people won't go in. You start to really see the patterns, and we just did not really used to notice it. You start to notice these things because you're picking up, even if it's not consciously, you're picking up on the frequency of other parts of the house. You're picking up on the frequency of other parts of the room. You're starting to feel into how different rooms, everything feels a little different, how you feel a little different, how you're starting to feel everything. We don't think about it. We don't sit there and think about it. We feel it. How does that feel to you? That's what the question you're always going to want to come back to. How do I feel about that? Not what I think about that. It doesn't matter what I think about that. If I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about it from my human ego. I'm thinking about it from a very limited one perspective way to look at something. I'm not thinking about it. I can't think about anything multidimensionally. It doesn't work that way. So if I loop back around, which I do when I kind of loop back around to, that damsel in distress energy, and we will always have a way out of it. There's going to be a lot of times when, I don't care, male, doesn't matter, female, it doesn't matter. We will feel like we're just waiting for someone to come along and assist us, right? We're just waiting for someone to come along. We have that very damsel in distress energy. That's a very human energy. I'm just waiting to be rescued. No matter what it is, you're just waiting to be rescued. And what we sometimes we don't understand is we always have, and like I said, if we go with the same thing, we always have a dagger to get out of the reality. Whether we're going to cut our way into the next reality or whatever, we always have a way out. We just might not like the way it presents, but there's always a way out. We've built it to be that way. We've built every reality to be able to exit it. The reason why it doesn't go smoothly is we don't exit it when we see we're supposed to. When we're human, we don't notice the signs it's collapsing. As we would become more conscious, we might notice some signs that might be collapsing, but we try to convince ourselves it's not because we want to buy more time in it. And sometimes there are realities where we know we're just buying time, and we kind of know that. And there's kind of a difference in that. So if you know that's what you're doing consciously, I'm just going to buy more time, buy another month, buy another 6 months, whatever. I feel like I'm supposed to do that. That's a little different from you're just trying to buy time because you don't want it to shift. You don't want it to end. And when the timeline ends, it's just because we ran out of time. It's over. Whatever that experience was, it's over. That's why you really want to appreciate every experience you have, because when it's done, you can't have the same one again because you're not the same. The reality is teed up differently now. You're not the same anymore. You can even see little shifts in the reality where all of a sudden it's not the same anymore. It's already starting to shift. And the more conscious you are, the more you're going to see those subtle shifts in the reality. A majority of realities for me, they usually have like a 9-month marker, but some will run 2 years, some will run longer than that. We have a lot of different cycles. We have a 9-month cycle, we have a 2-year cycle, we'll have a 3-year cycle, we'll have a 7-year cycle, you have a 21-year cycle. You'll have a lot of different, we all kind of have similar energetics in how they work. How long we create realities for based on our templates, and how long it takes really to create the next template. But we're always going to have a way out. We're never going to get stuck. We think we are stuck. And what you're going to find is you're going to have a less and less comfortable ride down. The dagger is going to get duller and duller if we ignore it. I can remember one reality where I knew I kept having ways I could align it easier, right? But then I go back and do the whole thing all over again. And then I'd get out of it. And the way I got out of it wasn't as smooth as before, but I still was given an opportunity to get out of it. And I would do the same damn shit again. And because I was still very much in my human consciousness, I didn't really realize that's what I was doing. Every time I got kind of like a life jacket, I'm throwing it back. Going, I'm fine. I'll just do it again. It'll be fine. Because nothing inside was changing. So nothing outside can change if nothing inside changes. So I just do the whole thing again. And then it became a point where the timeline ended, and I ran out of time. And it all collapsed. And my dagger, just a teeny little piece of wood, that's all you got left to go into your next reality on, because you waited too long. I had waited too long. I did not align it when I had the chance to, even though I knew it. And that can be the frustrating part when we're really in different parts of our ascension, where we can see it, but for whatever reason, we still have so much strong ego programming. We haven't broken that down. We still have so much of it that we don't even realize we're still operating from the ego. We think we're operating from a higher aspect of us. Because we have achieved higher consciousness, we think we are using that to create our realities. But we are not doing that yet. We're still using our human consciousness to create the realities. We haven't cleared enough of that, of our human programming, to be able to create from another place. Just because we can hit it, and at the time, I can channel, I can see all this stuff, I'm clairaudient, I'm clairvoyant, I'm all those things. I was still operating predominantly from ego programming when it came to the tough choices in my life. Money choices and where I'm going to live and people in my life. When I'm come down to the root chakra, because I had not purified the root yet. I had not purified the root chakra. I was still, even though my crown chakra was, that was on fire in a sense, I had not embodied in that energy yet. I hadn't brought all that energy down into the body to anchor it in the body, to where my vibration could raise, where I could actually even move the body into different realities. So I kept kind of playing out the same thing over and over and over again, because I didn't want to shift the big stuff. So we're going to find there's always a way out. We're never going to be a damsel in distress, even though we might feel like it. And even though we usually feel like that because we realize we have just fucked it up so bad over and over and over again that, like I've said it before, the mattress gets thinner and thinner. We're going to jump out the window onto the mattress and it just gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and our landing is a little harder every time. One, to kind of teach us. Our higher aspects are trying to show us, don't do that again. You keep doing it again. So now I got to make it worse every time. Because if I don't make it worse every time, you're not listening. So now I got to make it worse. It can't be like it was last time. It's got to be harsher. Because if I make it easy for you, you're not going to listen. And I can see that. Your higher aspects, you can't put anything by yourself. It knows what you're going to do. I mean, technically everything's already happened. So every higher aspect of you already knows what you're going to do. So it's kind of like a child, when it's disciplining a child, that's what it's doing. And our human aspect is a child. It's disciplining that child just like we would discipline a child. Don't do that, and they do it. Okay, well now next time your punishment is going to be even harsher because you're not listening and you keep doing the same thing. The same thing happens to us. Our higher aspects are like, okay, well now it's not going to be as easy. Now it's going to be rougher, and you keep having to want it rougher and rougher until all of a sudden there's no way. There is no clear way out. You gotta look for that. Someone's going to throw you that teeny tiny teeny tiny. And he was like, with that, when I just watched the Puss in Boots movie, and he had the little teeny tiny sword, to work with. And that's kind of how you feel like it. You got the little tiny sword now to cut your way out of the reality. And before you might have felt like you had a machete, but we didn't use it, or we used it, but only to cut a little bit because we really weren't ready to leave it yet. We had too much attached to the reality, so we weren't really ready to walk out of it yet. We still want to stay in there. We're still getting something out of the reality, and we have to be honest with ourselves, and we're kind of still setting in there. Why am I still setting in this reality? Why do I not want to leave it? What is going on with me where I still feel like, oh, I kind of still want to be in here. I'm not quite ready to let it go yet. I want to keep going. I've got too much story around it. I don't want the judgment of other people, which is really our judgment about the whole thing. We still hold the human judgment. That's why we kind of will be so afraid of somebody else's, because it's still ours. It's ours if we feel something. If we don't feel anything, it's not ours. And technically, if it's in a reality, it's ours even on a DNA level, because we haven't cleared out of our DNA yet. But if we have any emotion to it, it's 100% ours. You see so many people that'll say, oh, it's everybody else's stuff, it's not mine. And even when you say that, you kind of tell the frequency it gets set, and that, oh no, that's theirs. They just don't see it as theirs yet. They haven't recognized it as theirs yet. They still see it as it's somebody else's. All right, I'm going to open up the chat, see if I have anything. Okay, I do not. Let me see. I will, since I never pick a card on here, I think I am going to pick a card. Just see what I get. All right. See what's... Oh, yeah. Big one. This one is love ourselves first, time to build up our light. And it kind of goes into a lot of what we're talking about, in a sense of, there's a part of this process where we have to respect ourselves and love ourselves, but not disrespect other people, right? Because when we're in our human reality, we can't really tell the difference. But there is a part of this process where we have to kind of pull away. We have to pull away and be able to take care of ourselves. And we can't align anything because we don't have the capacity yet to see all the different ways it needs to be aligned to make it highest aligned. We don't see that yet. We don't have the connection. We don't have the access. We don't have the access yet. So we just have to connect with ourselves inside, because until we do that, there is nothing we can align. We cannot align anything until we connect with ourselves. If we haven't connected with ourselves, forget about trying to align anything. You're not going to be able to align it from your highest place. You're just going to repeat the whole thing all over again. Because it's going to be a very organic process on how you're going to be able to align a reality. You're going to find yourself aligning realities that are kind of small realities to you. They don't really matter. Let me align this small little thing, with the neighbor, which doesn't really matter. And then I'll worry about aligning something with my father, because I can't, if I can't align it with someone, I might see for 20 minutes every 2 weeks, forget about trying to align something over here, which I have a lot more story around that I have to clear. I have a lot more emotion around it. I have a lot more cords to it. And the cord just tethers to those old realities. So when you start to really cut the cord to those old realities and leave them, then you kind of have to make that decision: can it move to a different frequency? Can it move to a higher frequency, or can it not? Because everyone has to want to do that. It's not something where one of us can do it, because that's what a human will do, and that goes into that kind of self-sacrifice, self-sabotage energy. A lot of us as humans, we're like, well, we think of everyone else first. It's still a distortion energy, because we don't think about ourselves, we think about everybody else, but we're still thinking about everybody else because we want to feel good about how we do that. We still we're still getting something out of it, even though it's very twisted on what we get out of it. But we're still kind of getting something out of it, even though, it's not as clear as some other ways we could do the reality. But we kind of will go through those energies where we try to take care of everyone else and not ourselves. And then if you've always been a person that kind of hindered on that energy, then you will be pulling away and doing a lot of self-care with yourself. And then when we kind of take ourselves out of those realities, you can really see how much they affect you. But we can't see that when we're in it. Those are not things you're going to be able to see when you're in that reality. It's just not, it's not possible to see it. You know, it's just not something you're going to be able to see. Because it's almost, the clarity's not there. The consciousness is not there. So we really want to work on bringing that consciousness down. We really want to work on anchoring it in the body. That's kind of when you start getting into 60, 70, 80, 90 realities, where you're actually aligning your realities. But where it can get tripped up is you're like, well, these don't look like how I thought they were going to look, or am I doing it right? You know, because pretty bare over here with the reality. There's not a lot going on. And we have to work through the distortions of what we thought our human realities would be, you know. And we talked a little bit about that last time. You know, we talked about heaven on earth. It's not what human heaven on earth would be. It's what our soul aligned heaven would be. You know, we want to kind of take it from a very human perspective, and it goes back to the linearity of our human perspective. It only sees one way. You know, it's only going to say that's what the way I want that, or oh no, wait, I want it that way. But it's only going to kind of see that one way, and we're only seeing it one way. We're really discounting all the other ways. You know, we can see it. So I think that I can't think of anything else I really need to bring in today. I think that's a good place to stop. So I will not be here Tuesday. I'm going to take my own little spring break, and I will be back next Sunday though. So.